story. From ITN headquarters, the early evening news with Carol Barnes.
Lloyds, the Black Horse Bank, shied away from its multi-million-pound takeover bid for the Midland today. The Midland, the listening bank, liked what it heard. It prefers another bid from the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank. Lloyds' decision could safeguard up to 20,000 jobs and save 1,000 branches from closing.
After a 4-hour board meeting, Lloyds decided the price of increasing its bid was too high. It also faced the risk that any offer would be blocked by the competition authorities. Meeting just a few hundred yards down the road, Midland directors had already warned Lloyds to back off and given their reaction to a retreat.
Oh, well, obviously we would be very pleased. We can then get on with our work without a very considerable distraction.
20,000 banking jobs were at risk from a Lloyds takeover of Midland, and it threatened the closure of 1,000 branches. The banking union said they were delighted.
Our members in Lloyds Bank and Midland Bank can now get on with their basic job of serving the public without the threat of this wholesale job loss hanging over them.
It's only a week since Hong Kong Bank was forced to increase its bid for Midland. It now looks certain to win, and it's not ruling out some job losses.
There must be some rationalisation and there will be some streamlining, but there'll be new opportunities and some changes for the employees.
After its dogged pursuit of Midland, Lloyds' capitulation came as a surprise. The Hong Kong takeover will make Midland a tougher competitor in the high street. Lloyds will have to look for a new target. Greg Wood, ITN in the city.
Stories still to come on the early evening news. Submarine commander guilty of negligence over trawler tragedy. Major meets Kohl, what now for Maastricht? And no comment from the palace as media hype over the royal marriage grows. A trainee submarine commander whose boat sank a fishing vessel with a loss of 4 lives has been severely reprimanded by a military court. Lieutenant Commander Peter McDonnell was convicted of 3 charges of negligence over the sinking of the Antares 19 months ago.
The courts-martial decided that Lieutenant Commander McDonnell on the left here had been negligent because he failed to notice how close the Antares was and allowed HMS Trenchant to remain on a collision course with her for a full 8 minutes without checking her precise position. This occurred, said the prosecutor, during a protracted period of inattention. McDonnell had taken charge of HMS Trenchant on the last day of a make-or-break submarine command course called the Perisher, but officers heard he'd given his priority to a ship's control problem instead of the ship's safety. He knew from the computer screen the Antares was there, but had wrongly assessed her position. The first he knew the fishing boat was so close was when he heard 2 bumps and the vessels collided. Today, through his counsel, McDonnell said the proceedings had been like a black cloud hanging over him. He was glad it was all over.
I think the families of those tragically lost know how I feel about it. But I would just like to say that my thoughts are with them at this particular time.
The Navy say they've now formalised the custom and practice of students taking charge of nuclear submarines, and they've tightened up their operating procedures in fishing grounds. But they say it's vital they continue to use such waters for their war games. Vernon Mann, ITN, Plymouth.
Well, the families of the trawlermen who died say Lieutenant Commander McDonnell has been made a scapegoat. Christine Russell, the widow of the Antares skipper, Jamie Russell, says other officers should have been in the dock as well.
The little fishing boats were still sailing from Carradale this morning, just as the Antares had 19 months before. In this tight-knit community, everyone knew the 4 young men who died, and everyone has been following the court-martial closely. On the quayside today, Christine Russell, the widow of the Antares skipper, but she doesn't blame Peter McDonnell.
I don't really blame anyone in the ill will. I mean, it was an accident. They didn't go out to do it on purpose. It was an accident. And you could go out in a car tomorrow and run someone down. You don't intend to do it, but there have to be lessons learned from it. And I hope that they'll make the most of these lessons.
Foremost of these lessons, the fishermen say, is that submarines and trawlers should be completely separated to avoid another disaster. The Antares is now being restored at the Scottish Maritime Museum, a reminder of the perils faced by fishermen in these waters. David Rose, ITN, Carradale.
David, what's the reaction to the verdict in Carradale?
Carol, there's certainly no sense of wanting revenge in this small community, but there is a feeling that Peter McDonnell may have been made a scapegoat. One of the trawler skippers said to me today, if I'm taking a driving lesson and I have an accident, surely I'm not wholly to blame. McDonnell, he said, was just a learner, and that's a view that's widely felt up here.
Well, could this kind of accident happen again, do you think?
The Navy say no, the trawlermen say yes all too easily. You see, the perisher training exercise which killed the crew of the Antares has been taking place again in these waters out here. And trainee submarine captains have been playing war games out there. The trawlermen say that shouldn't be happening where they're fishing and while they're fishing. Why not carry out the training at the weekends, they say, when there's no fishing at all?
David Rose, thank you. MPs called on the press to respect the Princess of Wales's private life today after newspaper allegations that she'd taken an overdose. The story in the Daily Mail claims the princess tried to kill herself 6 years ago because she was so unhappy in her marriage.
There's a fortune to be made speculating on the future of the royal marriage, but the real story today is the sheer amount of hype surrounding 2 new books promising sensational revelations. Diana, her true story, is due to be serialised in the Sunday Times this weekend. The princess is said to have given tacit cooperation and access to private photographs. The picture painted, though, is a depressing one of a couple at war with one another. The Sunday Times is thought to have paid more than £250,000 for it. Diana, a Princess and Her Troubled Marriage is the title of the second book. It gives more details of an alleged suicide attempt by the princess and has been brought up by the Daily Mail with Nigel Dempster in a classic spoiling operation.
How is Diana herself coping with the endless rumours? I'll give you my opinion. Read The Unhappiness Behind the Smile. It starts tomorrow, only in the Daily Mail.
Charles is the vulnerable, important person in this whole thing because he is the future king, and if you tarnish that image, by the time he may come to reign, whatever that may be, you may feel that there is a nation that doesn't really want this.
This is the book that has caused allegations of theft and bribery.
It's the whole institution of the monarchy that's now being corroded by these stories, just at a time when their tax privileges and their civil list grants are coming under hostile scrutiny. David Chater, ITN, in central London.
Prime Minister John Major is now back in England after flying home from talks in Bonn with Germany's Chancellor Kohl. The 2 leaders discussed the crisis facing Europe after Denmark's rejection of the Maastricht Treaty. The talks were scheduled before the Danish referendum.
Chancellor Kohl was trying not to show it to John Major, but the Danish voters' rejection of the Maastricht Agreement has shaken him and his government to the core. Recent opinion polls here suggest German voters might reject Maastricht if they had a referendum. One reason is a fear of losing the stable German mark to a common European currency. Another is a disillusionment with the political process.
There's a very widespread and very deep-rooted feeling that politicians are not doing a proper job, that no matter if it is government or opposition, politicians have very little to say. There's a very widespread disenchantment, and right now the general mood of the German population in regard to politics is as poor as it can be.
Chancellor Kohl's government is trying to learn the lessons of the Danish vote.
I think it's a warning signal, what happened in Denmark, that you must be careful to take your population along when you embark on such ambitious plans.
Have you done that in Germany?
Not enough.
Ratification in the German parliament should be straightforward, but if the politicians here fail to win the minds of their voters, they'll be storing up problems for years to come. Geoffrey Archer, ITN, Bonn.
We're live now to Joe Andrews in Downing Street, where there's been a briefing on the talks. Joe, what have they been saying about Maastricht?
Well, what appears to have happened is that the Germans and the British, Mr Major and Mr Kohl, appear to have decided to play this long. The words used, wait and see what turns up. And it looks as though there won't definitely now be a special summit to try and sort out Maastricht. Instead, they'll wait until the Lisbon Council at the end of this month and then go on from there. It also looks as though the Maastricht bill in the House of Commons here won't come back to the Commons until after that meeting as well.
Well, I gather the future of the European fighter aircraft was also discussed.
Yes, and there's a bit of a problem here. The Germans basically say they've got some money problems, whereas the British say they think it's very important that it goes ahead. They talked about it for about half an hour today. They've agreed to go on talking. It's possible John Major and Mr. Kohl will talk in Rio in the sidelines. The two defence ministers will also talk, and so will officials. One suggestion is they could get the manufacturers to reduce the price.
Joe Andrews, thank you. Delegates at the Earth Summit in Brazil attacked President Bush today for saying he won't sign any treaties that put Americans out of work. He went on, if they don't understand in Rio, too bad. America is also refusing to sign a treaty to protect plants and animals.
As Brazil's President Fernando Collor and other world leaders were ceremonially planting trees in Rio, in Washington, President Bush was planting landmines under the summit. In a rare presidential press conference, he stressed domestic American interests.
But I have some responsibility. Responsibility for a cleaner environment, and also responsibility to families in this country who want to work, some of whom can be thrown out of work if we go for too costly an answer to some of these problems. And I'm not going to forget the American family. And if they don't understand it in Rio, too bad.
The people Bush called extremists say he's the extremist because of his refusal to sign the Biological Diversity Convention to protect animal and plant species.
The Biological Diversity Convention isn't a convention that threatens jobs for the environment. The only job that he's really concerned about is his own re-election in 1992.
Environmental groups point out that Bush's attitude isn't promising when it comes to the Americans approving Agenda 21, which deals with increased aid.
If the Americans won't sign up to biodiversity conventions, what hope is there for Agenda 21? Because that will depend on money, lots of money, and the Americans are the people with the deep pockets.
Public reaction among official delegates was muted, but the head of the Third World Bloc warned of dire consequences if more aid was not forthcoming to help developing countries.
Then we're heading towards not only ecological disaster, but I think an overall economic disaster. I may not see it, but you and your children certainly will, because I think it's as close to that.
In the last few minutes, the chief American negotiator here, William Riley, told ITN that he had in fact worked out a compromise on the Biodiversity Convention with the Brazilians. But when he sent it to the White House last night, President Bush turned it down. Lawrence McGuinty, ITN, Rio de Janeiro.
Here, the water companies are in hot water with consumer groups tonight. The water watchdog Ofwat says more than 22,000 homes had their water turned off because of unpaid bills last year.
The water companies disconnected a record number of people who didn't pay their bills. The dramatic rise, 177%, was put down to the depth of the recession. At this tower block, 19 people were cut off for a week. And across England and Wales, the situation has grown worse. 3 years ago, the taps were turned off for 8,426 domestic users. The following year, disconnections went down to 7,673. But last year, as the recession took hold, the figures soared to 21,286.
Now, what we've been saying to the companies is that you need to recognise that not all of your customers are going to find it easy to pay that bill. Even though it's still half the average gas and electricity bill for the year, not everybody's going to find it easy to adjust.
Unfortunately, disconnection is our last resort, following on from a very lengthy procedure, which takes up to 5 months from the original bill to a county court summons, judgment, and finally disconnection.
Consumer groups warn that disconnections could continue to rise and have called on water companies to help people who can't pay bills for a natural resource.
Sports news. UEFA has given England the all-clear to call up Andy Sinton and Keith Curle for their European Championship squad. They replace the injured Gary Stevens and John Barnes. Bad light has further delayed the first Cornhill test between England and Pakistan at Edgbaston. Play lasted for just 2 hours before the umpires called a halt. And the defending champion Jim Courier is through to the men's final in the French Open after beating Andre Agassi. He plays Peter Korda of Czechoslovakia, who beat Henri Lecomte. And the main news again. Lloyds Bank has pulled out of the takeover battle for the Midland, leaving the way clear for the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank. A military court has severely reprimanded a trainee submarine commander after his boat sank the fishing vessel Antares. And there's been silence from the palace over allegations that the Princess of Wales once tried to commit suicide. And that's the early evening news till Monday at 5:40. Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend.
Good evening. Cold, grey, wet and miserable sums up today for most of us, but things will improve through the weekend. A little bit of brighter weather that was already around today in the north and west of Scotland is going to extend a little bit further south through the weekend, so many places can look forward to some sunshine, but there will be more showers in the south. If you look at today's weather chart, things are fairly unsettled. High pressure was around in the far north. That's where the bit of sunshine came from. But the weather front that's been producing today's rain over much of England and Wales will be moving away south and eastwards overnight, clearing the southwest about midnight. But that's going to be followed by another area of low pressure and yet another weather front brushing close to the southeast and keeping those showers going down there. If you're heading away from Europe, well, down in the far south there towards the Mediterranean, you'll find the usual sunshine down there. The low pressure keeping the north unsettled for a while yet. Let's come back to the UK and tonight's chart in more detail. Still a fair bit of rain around at the moment, but during the night, most of that's going to move away from the south and west there. Many places dry, but further bursts of rain coming into the southeastern corner, as you can see there. One or two mist and fog patches to watch out for too. On to tomorrow, well, the best of tomorrow's weather will certainly be up in the north and west again, as it was today. A lot of cloud in the south, still further bursts of rain, mostly in the far southeast there during the morning. And in the afternoon, that thicker cloud beginning to break up, but what sunshine there is will set off further showers, perhaps even the odd thunderstorm. One thing for sure tomorrow, it's going to feel much warmer for us all, into the 20s in most places, cooler on the east coast, but perhaps as high as 23 or even 24, so certainly a lot warmer than today was. And a look ahead at Sunday, well, it's more of the same, really, showers in the south, but sunshine the further north and west you go, and warmer, certainly, as you see again, it's into the 20s, that's the low 70s. But there you are, not too bad a story, really, compared with today. Some sunshine and some showers. Good night.
Hello and welcome to the weekend with 6 o'clock live. Now then, tonight we were going to be saying welcome to the summer.
But making this our summer special was, of course, tempting fate. Typical English summer's day out there, fog and rain.
Looks really cheerful, doesn't it, don't you think? Never mind, though, because the sun always shines here on 6 o'clock live.
Tonight we've got everything to make the most of your summer when it finally arrives.
And stand by for the challenge of the summer. The Lotus Esprit sports car can reach 60 miles an hour in less than 5 seconds. But England rugby captain Will Carling reckons he can run faster. Sounds impossible? Find out later if he makes it.
When you can also meet the summer's biggest stars.
Tom Jones is busy rehearsing for his new series starting tomorrow on ITV, but he's with us tonight.
I'll be telling you why my new show is going to be unbelievable.
The flutter of flying underwear. Also coming up, we're flying high with the restaurant of the summer. It's somewhere up there.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board our flying restaurant. Food and drinks will be served at 17,000 feet. We should be stable for your comfort.
And Jenny's with food tonight. Some things never change here. But she's definitely drawn the short straw. She's 10 floors down on the riverside down here for our summer party and cooking a barbecue in the rain, Jenny.
Yes, thank you very, very much, Frank, for sending me down here. It's gorgeous. It may have dampened my script, but it hasn't dampened our appetites here, and we haven't dampened our barbecue by Mary Jane. And to give us some heat, look, lads from Take, that superb band, and 2 of their little fans over there, all the way from Essex, they've come. Want to dance to them, but later on. And lots of people are going to be doing lots and lots of things with the telephone. 27 hours of this. My goodness, 27 hours of this. And all sorts of things will be going on. So why don't you join us later when Paul is going to be doing his press-ups, Take That are going to be singing, this lot are going to be tapping, and I am going to be eating. Goodbye.
We were going to be with her, but it's too wet down there for us. All that to come, plus a competition to win family tickets for top attractions this summer. But first, tonight's news from around the southeast with Anna Maria. Good evening.
Thank you, Frank.
First tonight, the agony continues. A year on from the Penny Bell murder, her friends and family still mourn their loss. Today, they asked for help in hunting down her killer. Nikki Marks reports.
12 months ago, the headlines screamed out the appalling details of the murder of company director Penny Bell. A year later, detectives are still trying to solve one of the most baffling cases of recent years. Mrs. Bell was discovered slumped at the wheel of her Jaguar car in the car park of the Gurnell Grove swimming pool in Greenford. She'd been stabbed up to 50 times. Today, her husband once again faced the press in the hope that it'll help catch Penny's killer. He and his children are continuing to struggle to rebuild their lives.
Our routine follows very much the routine as to when Penny was alive. Children have to go to school, I have to go to the office. We're lucky that we have very, very supportive friends. Their support is ongoing, and without them I don't know where we would be, but we do get through, and they are very supportive to us and keeping the routine going.
Penny Bell's business partner of 20 years still works at the office they shared in Kilburn. Life for him too has been an uphill struggle.
I just wouldn't wish this on anyone. I mean that sincerely. I really would not wish it on anybody. But there we are. It's not going to bring Penny back.
Officers have followed up every lead, but say the vital piece of information they need is still missing. Detectives have revealed that a man's been